The room was dimly lit and silent, except for the sound of Amarachi's shaky breathing. She stood pressed against the wall, heart pounding, as the influential director slowly approached with a predatory smile. "You know what you need to do if you want this role," he said softly, his voice dripping with dangerous sweetness. Amarachi's mouth went dry. She had dreamed of this chance, a big role, but not like this. The man's hand reached out to caress her cheek, and she flinched. Every instinct told her to run. I'm not that kind of girl," Amarachi managed to whisper, her voice trembling. The director's smile vanished. His expression hardened. "Then you're in the wrong industry," he snapped, blocking the door with his broad frame. Amarachi felt a surge of fear like a cold wave. Was this really what it took to become a star? No, something inside her refused to accept that. Mustering every ounce of courage, Amarachi ducked under the director's arm and bolted. His fingertips grazed her shoulder, but she tore away and yanked the door open. "Don't ever show your face here again," he shouted as she fled into the humid Lagos night. Amarachi's vision blurred with tears. She didn't stop running until the city lights and traffic swallowed his furious voice. Finally, she stumbled to a halt under a flickering streetlight. Her whole body trembled. This was the most devastating night of her life. She wondered if her Nollywood dream had just become a nightmare. A few months earlier, Amarachi arrived in Lagos with a battered suitcase and hope in her eyes. The afternoon sun beat down as she stepped off a bus into the bustling chaos of the city. The air was thick with heat, exhaust fumes, and possibility. The city roared with horns and shouts. Amarachi clutched her suitcase and smiled nervously. Lagos was chaotic and alive. It felt like the start of something big. She found a room in a crowded flat in Surale, an area known for film studios and street markets. The apartment was cramped and a bit run down, but her roommates were friendly and full of dreams too. One of them was Jasmine, a bubbly comic actress who quickly became Amarachi's close friend. They bonded over their shared goal of making it in Nollywood and promised to help each other along the way. The very next day, Amarachi went to her first casting call. It was for a small part in a music video. When she arrived at the studio lot, dozens of hopefuls were already lined up under the blazing sun. She joined the queue, heart pounding with nerves and excitement. As she waited, she struck up a conversation with a tall young man standing behind her. His name was Femi, and he had a warm, easy smile. He told her he was an aspiring actor too, but he drove an Okada, a motorcycle taxi, during the day to pay the bills. They inched forward in line for what felt like hours. Finally, Femi went in for his audition. He emerged a few minutes later, shaking his head with a wry smile. "They said I'm not what they are looking for," he sighed. Amarachi could see the disappointment in his eyes, but he still managed to grin. "Good luck in there," he told her. When Amarachi's turn came, she stepped into the small audition room. She introduced herself and did exactly what they asked, a quick dance and a bright smile for the camera, since it was a music video role. It was over in a flash. "Thank you, next," one of the casting people said, already looking past her. She walked out uncertain, her cheeks flushed. Femi was putting on his helmet to leave. "How did it go?" he asked. "Honestly, I have no idea. It was so quick," Amarachi admitted with a half chuckle. "Don't worry. There are plenty more auditions ahead," Femi said encouragingly. As he revved up his bike, he gave her a playful salute. "See you at the Oscars, he joked. Amarachi laughed and waved as he sped off into the busy street. The joke warmed her heart. In a city full of strangers and fierce competition, she was glad to have found a friendly face. Over the next several weeks, Amarachi attended audition after audition. She woke up before dawn to cram into buses across town for casting calls in hot studio lots. She faced long lines, crowded waiting rooms, and many rejections or, worse, silence. Often, even her best auditions ended in a polite "we'll be in touch" that never came. Each evening, back at the flat, Amarachi and Jasmine would swap stories about their day. Some experiences were heartbreaking, but others were so absurd they had to laugh. Like the time Jasmine was asked to laugh and cry at the same time during an audition, a ridiculous request that had them both in stitches as Jasmine reenacted her attempt, mixing fake sobs with hysterical giggles. Moments like that helped them cope with the stress and kept their spirits alive. Still, life was far from easy. To afford rent and food, Amarachi took a part-time job serving at a small local restaurant. By day she dashed to auditions, by afternoon and night she carried heavy trays of food and washed dishes. Often she'd come home late, exhausted, her feet aching. But if Jasmine was still awake, she would greet Amarachi with a joke or a bowl of gari and cassava flakes to share as a simple dinner. They kept each other going through the tough days. One afternoon, Amarachi and Jasmine both went to an open audition for a new movie titled Love in Lagos. The role Amarachi hoped for was the best friend to the lead character, a role Jasmine also had her eye on. The waiting hall was packed with young women, all fanning themselves in the stuffy heat and murmuring lines under their breath. After a long wait, Jasmine was called in first. She emerged a few minutes later with a small shrug and an ironic smile. "They said I'm funny, but not the type they want," she whispered to Amarachi. Amarachi gave her a quick side hug. Then Amarachi's name was called. Inside the audition room, 3 people sat behind the table, the director and 2 producers. Amarachi took a deep breath, introduced herself, and performed the scene she had prepared, a cheerful monologue where the best friend encourages the heroine to follow her heart. She infused it with warmth and a bit of humor, hoping to stand out. When she finished, one of the producers smiled and nodded, but the director pursed his lips in thought. "You've got a spark, Amarachi," he said. Her heart lifted for a second until he continued, "Have you ever considered using a skin lightening cream?" The question felt like a punch to Amarachi's gut. "Excuse me," she asked, hoping she misheard. The director gave a thin, dismissive smile. "You have talent, but the industry favors a certain look. A fairer complexion. If you lighten your skin a shade or 2, you might have a better chance at landing roles." Amarachi's stomach churned. She had heard of this kind of bias, but experiencing it firsthand was crushing. She stood tall and replied softly, "No, sir. I won't do that." The director shrugged, already looking at his notes. "All right then. Thank you for coming," he said curtly, indicating the audition was over. Amarachi left the room, holding her composure until she reached the hall. Outside, Jasmine saw the tears brimming in Amarachi's eyes and hurried to her side. Amarachi's voice shook with hurt and anger as she whispered, He told me to bleach my skin if I ever want a big role." Jasmine gasped, then pulled Amarachi into a tight hug. "That's awful. I'm so sorry," she murmured. Amarachi finally let the tears fall, right there in the corridor. She had tried to be strong, but those words cut deep. That evening, back home, Amarachi was despondent. Jasmine sat beside her on their thin mattress and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Listen to me, Amara," Jasmine said gently, using the nickname she'd given her. "Don't you dare let that foolish man make you doubt yourself. Your dark skin is beautiful. It's part of who you are." Amarachi wiped her eyes. It just hurt so much. What if every director thinks that way? "They don't," Jasmine said firmly. "Not all of them. And even if some do, we'll find ones who don't. You'll prove that director wrong one day, you'll see. Talent and heart matter more than looks. We have to believe that. Amarachi managed a weak smile and leaned on her friend. Thank you. I won't change myself, I promise. It just really got to me. I know, Jasmine said, giving her a supportive squeeze. It got to me too. But we keep going, okay? No giving up. Amarachi took a deep breath and nodded. Okay. Not everyone in Nollywood was like that director. In fact, some people she met were determined to change the industry for the better. At a small networking event for young filmmakers, Amarachi was introduced to Ademola, a thoughtful, principled young director. Ademola was passionate about telling authentic stories and refused to sell out by adding cheap gimmicks to please investors. He quickly became a friend and creative ally to Amarachi and Jasmine. Before long, Amarachi and Jasmine volunteered to act in a short film that Ademola was shooting on a shoestring budget. They spent weekends filming in busy markets and on noisy streets, using borrowed cameras and their own clothes as costumes. They often had to pause shooting whenever a truck rumbled by or curious passers-by wandered into the scene, but they laughed about it and kept going. The short film didn't make them famous, but it gave Amarachi a chance to truly act and be proud of a meaningful story. Working with Ademola and the small crew felt like being part of a family, all of them driven by creativity and hope rather than money. A few weeks after the short film was released online, Amarachi received an unexpected phone call. Hello, is this Amarachi Okafor? An unfamiliar male voice asked. Yes, this is she, Amarachi answered, curious. Good afternoon. My name is Kingsley Okoro. I'm a film director, the caller said smoothly. Amarachi's eyes widened, she knew that name. Mr. Okoro had directed a couple of notable Nollywood movies. He continued, I watched the short film you were in, the one Ademola directed. Your performance caught my eye. I have a project in the works, and I think you might be a good fit for a role. Are you available to meet and discuss it? Amarachi almost dropped the phone in shock. Her heart raced. Yes. Yes, sir. I'm available, she replied, trying not to sound too eager. They arranged to meet at his office the next day. That night, excitement kept Amarachi wide awake, imagining that this could be the break she had prayed for. The following afternoon, Amarachi arrived at Mr. Okoro's small office in Ikeja. She smoothed down her modest dress and took a steadying breath before knocking. Inside, Mr. Okoro, a well-dressed man in his 40s, greeted her with a broad smile and offered her a seat. After a bit of polite small talk, Mr. Okoro began describing the role he had in mind. It was a supporting role in a serious drama about a village girl who faces hardships in the city. As he talked, Amarachi felt hope blooming in her chest. This sounded perfect, a role she could pour herself into. You have something special, Amarachi, Mr. Okoro said, giving her an appraising look. With my guidance, you could go far in this industry. Amarachi blushed at the praise. Thank you, sir. I'm willing to learn and do my best, she replied earnestly. Mr. Okoro leaned forward, his tone turning softer. Talent and hard work are important, but, he paused meaningfully. Loyalty is important too. In Nollywood, connections and loyalty often open doors. You understand what I'm saying? Amarachi felt a twinge of uncertainty. I think so, she said quietly. He smiled, but something in his eyes made her uneasy. He moved a bit closer. I'm looking for someone I can take under my wing. Someone who is willing to do whatever it takes for success, he said, enunciating the words. His hand casually brushed against her knee as he spoke. Alarm bells went off in Amarachi's mind. She inched back in her chair. "Sir, I'm grateful for your interest," she said, heart thumping, "but I only want to earn roles through my work." Mr. Okoro's friendly expression faded. "Come now, Amarachi," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Many girls would jump at this opportunity. I make you a star, you make me happy in return. That's how it works at the top." Amarachi's stomach turned. Any doubt about his meaning vanished. She felt a mix of fear and disgust rising inside her. Gathering her courage, she stood up. "I'm sorry, sir. I can't do that," she said, her voice trembling but firm. Mr. Okoro's face hardened. He got up as well and, with a cold smile, quietly clicked the lock on the office door. The soft sneak of the lock made Amarachi's blood run cold. In that instant, Amarachi realized she might be in real danger. As Mr. Okoro stepped toward her, she acted on instinct. She ducked around him, yanked the door open, nearly hitting him with it, and ran. She didn't look back as she fled down the hallway and out onto the street, tears of shock in her eyes. Mr. Okoro's furious shouts followed her briefly until they were drowned out by the honking of cars and the buzz of pedestrians. Amarachi didn't stop running until she was several blocks away. Late that night, Amarachi returned home to the flat, her body shaking and eyes red from crying. Jasmine was waiting up and leapt to her feet as soon as Amarachi stumbled in. "Amara, what happened?" she exclaimed, rushing over. At the concern in her friend's voice, Amarachi's composure cracked. She sank onto the old couch and, through broken sobs, told Jasmine everything. "He didn't want my acting, he wanted me, in exchange for the role," she whispered, voice quivering with humiliation and anger. "I barely escaped." Jasmine's face shifted from worry to fury as the story spilled out. "That horrible man," she burst out. "I'm so proud of you for saying no. He had no right." Amarachi buried her face in her hands. "I was so scared," she admitted. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this industry after all. If people like him have the power, how will I ever succeed without doing those things?" Jasmine knelt beside her and looked her in the eye. "Hey, don't say that. You are cut out for this. That man is just one person, a bad, rotten person. There are good people out there too. Don't let him be the end of your dream." Femi arrived at the flat not long after. Jasmine had texted him earlier in a panic, and he came as soon as he finished his last taxi job of the night. He listened in outrage as Amarachi, now coma, recounted what happened. Femi sat down heavily, shaking his head. "I'm so sorry, Amarachi. This sort of thing, it's not your fault," he said gently. "The best revenge is success on your own terms. Don't let someone like that make you give up." Amarachi looked at her two friends. They were both so earnest, so supportive. Despite the horror of the night, a small smile tugged at her lips. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice hoarse but sincere. "I won't quit. I promise." Jasmine hugged her again, and Femi patted her back kindly. They stayed with her late into the night, encouraging her with soft words and even cracking a few jokes to make her smile. Surrounded by friends, Amarachi felt her strength returning bit by bit. The very next morning, an audition was being held for a minor part in a prestigious film by a respected director named Obafemi. Amarachi had originally planned to attend, but after the previous night she wasn't sure she had the heart to face another audition so soon. Still, Jasmine and Femi gently urged her on. "This is a new day," Jasmine said, handing Amarachi her bag. "Go to the audition. You have nothing to lose." With a shaky smile and a deep breath, Amarachi agreed. She reminded herself that not everyone in the industry was like Mr. Okoro. Director Obafemi, she'd heard, was an honest man who valued talent. She had to give it a chance for herself. At the audition venue, a major studio, the atmosphere already felt calmer and more professional than many other tryouts she'd been to. Amarachi waited in a quiet corridor, running her lines in her head and trying to steady her nerves. She could do this. She had to believe that she could. When it was her turn, Amarachi stepped into the audition room. A few people were seated at a table, and among them she recognized director Obafemi himself, a distinguished older man with a kindly face. He gave her a polite nod of greeting. They handed Amarachi a page from the script. It was a scene where the character, the younger sister of the protagonist, pleads with her older sibling not to give up hope. Amarachi's hands trembled slightly as she held the paper, but she closed her eyes for a second and remembered why she was here. She loved acting, and she was good at it. She began the scene. As Amarachi spoke, she forgot about the strangers watching her. She truly became that desperate younger sister begging her loved one to hold on. Every bit of pain, fear, and hope from her own journey flowed through her performance. Her voice quivered with emotion, and tears gathered in her eyes as she delivered the final lines. When she finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Amarachi blinked, returning to reality, and worried she might have gotten carried away. She quickly wiped the tears off her cheeks and bit her lip, bracing for feedback. Director Obafemi cleared his throat, and Amarachi's heart thudded. "That was very powerful," he said warmly. The casting director beside him was smiling, and another panelist nodded in agreement. "Thank you," Amarachi murmured, her hope beginning to flicker alive. 2 days later, Amarachi got the call that made her burst into tears of joy. She had earned the part. It was a modest supporting role, just a few scenes, but in a high-profile film. It was real. When she hung up the phone, she screamed so loud that Jasmine nearly fell off the couch in surprise. "You got it!" Jasmine shrieked, eyes huge. "I got it!" Amarachi laughed and cried at the same time. Jasmine tackled her in a hug, and they jumped around the tiny living room, squealing with delight. Femi came running up the stairs. He happened to be dropping off a package he'd picked up for them, and burst in to see what the commotion was. When he heard the news, he whooped and scooped Amarachi into a bear hug, lifting her off the ground. That night the little flat was filled with celebration. They even treated themselves to meat pies and soft drinks. To your first Nollywood role, today a small part, tomorrow a lead. Jasmine cheered as they raised their drinks. They clinked cups together and laughed with joy. Amarachi had never felt happier. "No matter what happens next, this is a moment I'll never forget," she said, meaning every word. In the weeks that followed, Amarachi threw herself into filming with all her heart. She arrived early on set each day, eager and prepared. The first time she walked onto the set, with bright lights, professional cameras, and a crew bustling around, she had to pinch herself. This was really happening. Everyone on set treated Amarachi kindly, and she was determined to prove she deserved to be there. When it came time to film her big emotional scene, she was ready. In the scene, her character begs her older sister not to lose hope, the very scene she'd auditioned with. As the cameras rolled, Amarachi delivered the performance with raw honesty. Tears streamed down her face as she poured every bit of her heart into the lines. "Cut!" Director Obafemi called out. For a split second, Amarachi worried she might have done something wrong. But then she noticed the hush on set. Several crew members were looking at her with wide eyes, and one was even dabbing at his face as if hiding tears. The lead actress playing her sister reached over and squeezed Amarachi's hand, her own eyes moist. "That was beautiful," she whispered. Obafemi walked up, smiling broadly. "Excellent take," he said, patting Amarachi on the shoulder. A few people nearby clapped quietly. Amarachi's cheeks flushed, and a glowing warmth spread through her chest. In that moment, under the bright studio lights, she felt truly like an actress, not a struggling newbie, but a capable actress earning her place. By the end of filming, director Obafemi told her, "You did very well, Amarachi. I'm glad we cast you." Those simple words meant the world to her. The film was set to premiere at a big international film festival in Lagos a couple of months later. To Amarachi's astonishment, all the cast members were invited to attend the red carpet premiere, including her. She used part of her small paycheck to buy a lovely evening gown from a thrift boutique, a flowing emerald green dress that complemented her rich brown skin. Jasmine helped tailor it to fit just right, and on the day of the premiere, one of the film's makeup artists kindly did Amarachi's makeup and hair. That evening, Amarachi arrived at the Lagos Arts Center, where the festival was in full swing. She stepped out of the car and her breath caught at the sight ahead. A long red carpet stretched towards the entrance, lined with flashing cameras, reporters, and excited fans. Glamorous celebrities were milling about, giving interviews and posing for photos under the bright lights. Amarachi felt her knees wobble for a second out of sheer awe. Gathering her courage, she placed one foot in front of the other and began to walk the red carpet. Almost immediately, she heard voices calling out, "Amarachi, over here, please." She turned toward the cameras, smiling nervously as a flurry of flashes went off. The noise, the lights, the glamour, it was overwhelming and thrilling all at once. A reporter stepped forward and gently stopped her for a quick interview. "Amarachi, this is your first big premiere," the reporter began, holding a microphone. "How are you feeling tonight?" Amarachi took a moment to steady her voice. She was truly standing on a red carpet, living the moment she had fantasized about. She felt a joyous flutter in her chest. "I feel amazing and grateful," she said, her smile radiant. "A few months ago, I was just an aspiring actress with a dream. And now I'm here at a premiere. It doesn't feel real." The reporter nodded and asked, "What would you say you've learned from this journey?" Amarachi thought for a second, then said softly, "I've learned that integrity, friendship, and perseverance mean everything. I learned that you should never give up on yourself, and never lose who you are, no matter how hard things get." The reporter beamed and thanked her for her time. As Amarachi moved on, she spotted her friends standing to the side, waving excitedly. Jasmine, Femi, and Ademola had managed to get tickets to the screening. Amarachi hurried over for a moment and they all wrapped her in a huge hug, nearly as thrilled as she was. They told her they'd always believed she would shine, and that this was only the beginning. Jasmine even wiped away a happy tear and joked, "Don't forget us when you're a huge star, okay?" Amarachi laughed and promised she never would. Amarachi realized that all the hardships and setbacks had made this victory even sweeter. She had succeeded without sacrificing her integrity, thanks to perseverance and the support of her friends. Her story, one of integrity, friendship, and perseverance, was the real script behind her success. And this premiere felt like just the beginning of her Nollywood dream.